Here we are back again for another training camp. Loads of fun, double sessions and all that great stuff. Lots of football. Brian Doan, Sam Hellman, Fox Sports Next, ScarletReport.com. Sam, the players reported on Thursday. Friday afternoon, they start training camp. Every team goes into this thing thinking they have a chance to win it all. I think the biggest thing with Rutgers is once they figure out the name of the conference that they're in for this season before they make the move to the Big Ten, is there's a couple position battles that need to take place. A couple things need to get settled. In your mind, what has to get settled in training camp?
You got to figure out what's going to happen with the offensive line. Kyle Flood does not like to make a lot of in-season changes, so you want to come out of training camp knowing who your best five are and where they're going to play on the offensive line. We didn't see a lot of changes last year in that line, and it was inconsistent, but there was some good play at certain times in the year. They made changes in the spring on the offensive line. The same guys that ended the spring will start training camp on the line, and I'm interested to see how that plays out through the first couple scrimmages.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, just about all the, for a couple years when Greg Schiano was the head coach, it was like every day of the week there was something that changed on the offensive line. You figured, well, what's going on here? Then Kyle Flood in his first year, you knew who was going to be starting and when for the most part. So you knew, looking back at it, where you wonder who was trying to settle the offensive line all that time, you realize, okay, it was Schiano who was kind of trying to mix the pieces and match things. And I think you're right with the offensive line. The other thing I want to see what happens at the cornerback position. And also, Lorenzo Waters is going to be fine at safety, but does Sheldon Royster step up? How does Jeremy Deering do at safety? I want to see things like that. Look, we're going to be here every day for camp. So there's going to be plenty of time to break down a lot of other things. But as we begin camp, we're just going to take a look at maybe some players that we want to see on each side one player on each side of the ball. We're going to start out offensively. Sam, who's the guy you want to see this training camp?
It's the guy that we've been talking about for 2 years at this point, but I want to see what Gary Nova does in training camp. Gary Nova had a great spring. There's no denying it. It's just a fact. He had a great spring. But it's spring practice. He didn't have Brandon Coleman. He had a different offensive line for most of the spring. Can he continue the success into training camp is what I want to see. He was good enough last camp to very clearly win the starting job. Can he do it again? He is the starting quarterback, but he needs to improve over what was a poor finish last year, and training camp is the time to do that.
Well, yeah, quarterback's interesting, and right now I'm putting the over-under on threads on the message board at 412 for Gary Nova threads for training camp. The guy I want to see is Chris Muller. He's going to play right guard. He was part of the heralded offensive line class of a couple of years ago. Look, they're on target. This is what it's very tough for a freshman to come in and play right away. On defense, when I look at them defensively, there's one guy I want to see more than anything. It's Lewis Toller. Lewis Toller, kid out of Western Michigan, fifth-year senior. Hey, you don't come to another program as a fifth-year senior, a starter at another program, to ride the bench. Kyle Flood said all the right things. Toller's going to have to work his way onto the depth chart to be a starter. If that kid's not a starter, I would have to think he would be terribly disappointed in his decision to transfer. There's no reason to think he won't be a starter. I want to see what kind of game he has and what he's like in practice going against the Ruhan Peels and the Brandon Colemans.
I'm very interested to see what kind of camp Steve Longa puts up at middle linebacker. He bounced around at a few different positions during the spring, but found a home at middle linebacker, which was a bit of a surprise with, Kevin Snyder and Quanzel Lambert before he moved, both working there. But you know what? He emerged in the spring as the best option at middle linebacker. LJ Liston's going to push for that job, but I want to see what Steve Longa can do in a full training camp. He's had a full summer to study the film, learn the plays at the position. He's got veterans around him. His defensive coordinator also happens to be the linebackers coach. So he's going to get plenty of training, and physically, he's very transformed from what he was when he arrived 12 months ago.
Hey, like we said, we'll be here every day for practices. Less than 4 weeks to Fresno State.